You know, my son Shia was in Jerusalem until the pandemic hit, and he had to immediately figure out how to flee the holiest city on the face of the earth. And I thought in my heart, as an Abba and as someone who's an Ohev Yerushalayim, as someone who loves Jerusalem, this is going to be the hardest leaving in the world. This is going to be the saddest moment. Here he was at this beautiful yeshiva experience at Oraita, the yeshiva in the old city where he was learning. And I worried for his soul, and I worried for his spirit, and I thought he might be crushed. And the reality is that he looked at me when he got off the plane, finally, after we figured out that he'd have to travel through Moscow and take an airfloat and switch planes. And thankfully, he wasn't on one of those from Europe that was stopped at the gates. He got off the plane, and, you know, I saw a spark in his eyes. What was the spark? Is that it was the spark of having gratitude for a life that was filled with challenge, with growth, and with love. And that's exactly the teaching that came out of Jerusalem from Oraita, from wonderful founder and dean of Israelite, the Rosh Yeshiva of Oraita, Rabbi David Aaron. Sends Torah out of Jerusalem to say, don't forget, let's not forget that the world was created by God to be a place filled with dynamic life possibilities for growth that will be challenging, and for love, for there's work to do. And so many people have been asking me, feeling either despair or despondent, or like they're digging in to their cause or their movement or their side. They're asking me, how much more of this can we take? How much more of this can we take? That's what every Shabbat is for, actually. We don't just keep it steamrolling, and we don't just continue without breaking the time and the space and the place and the attitudes and the endeavors that we have. We stop, just like God built into the fabric of the world, the time to stop. At first, there was chaos and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. And then God brought some order to it all. That's the paradigm. There will be chaos, and there will be tohu, and there will be vohu, and there will be darkness. And let there be light. Let there be or. Or zarua tzaddik. For those who are pursuing tzedakah and righteousness, there will be some light. And that's the kind of commitment that we can make again and again on the Sabbath day. Let there be space in the midst of the waters. God gave us the tools, or at least told us the story and shared with us the narrative that could help us understand what we would have to do in this world of challenge, and this world of potential growth, and this world of love. Because when the fish are made, and when the creatures come, and when the garden needs to be tended, and when the seeds have to be replanted, and when the waves of grain, the amber waves of grain, have to be taken and milled into flour and made into bread, we know the work that we need to do. And we can focus and refocus on all of the holy work that needs to get done. But Vayishbot bayom hashvi'i mikol melachto asher asa. But God stopped on the seventh day. God stopped the work. And sometimes we need to stop focusing on the work. Sometimes we need the full stop when it comes to the news feeds and the opinion columns and the body counts and the case counts and the hospitalization counts and how many people were murdered and how many people suffer and what systems are in place that need to be broken and remade. We need to stop that feed. We need to stop all the rearranging and the reorganizing and the making and the doing and the recombining and the milling and even the baking. And we need to act in that divine and godly way of retreating from all that. Like the mystics teach in the mythos of Tzimtzum, like the Lurianic Kabbalistic principle. God retreated to make space for all of reality. And in a certain way, that's the answer. That we need to take ourselves out of that space we were living in order to see the world as potentially anew. In a little bit of a way, Shabbat then becomes like a holy void. But on the other hand, it's the koach that can lead to the foach. It's the potential that can lead to the new hishtanut, the change, and hitchadshut, and the renewal, and the reality that we could envision. The reality that we could envision as ki tov, like God saw the first week of creation and all those days as ki tov, filled with so much good, and could be filled with so much more. This imperfect world is the perfect place for challenge, growth, and love. Rabbi Aaron's message from Jerusalem to his students who had to leave that holy city in the face of a great breakdown of safety and protection, of a public health emergency, of systems that couldn't respond exactly right to everybody's needs as human beings. And those are the systems breakdowns that some of us might really be focused on and feel so deeply right now, that there are systems breakdowns not serving all of humanity. But Vayishbot Bayom HaShvi'i, we need the full stop of the Sabbath to reimagine that world that can be renewed and rebuilt and retooled and put into a new order. And we shouldn't despise the challenge. We shouldn't let it get us so sad and down. We should sense that there's some wonderful visions and foundations upon which to build. And that's the gift of having Shabbat in our lives. And that's the gift of having the visions of Jerusalem, even the this worldly Jerusalem, and moreover the Yerushalayim Shel Ma'ala, the Jerusalem on high, the symbol of the potential redemption that exists when there's a direct line to learning from the holiest of sources, of renewing our connection with God and God's plan as a model for how to make our lives richer and how to build our world into a holier place. Shabbat Shalom.